Yeah, I'm never using that one again. Hola, and buenos dias, GnGs. My name is Trekkw2ks, and this is Weekend Crypto brought to you here on the Gentleman Crypto YouTube channel. Yeah, so I did a little bit better today as far as the setup, but at the same time, I'm seeing how the stuff is delayed, right? Nonetheless, if you don't know, the basic idea on this particular segment is I cover crypto-related news stories that happen over the weekend, pop them out 08 on a Monday morning. I've been trying to work better on doing this whole live thing at the 08, but the goal today was to do a pre-record. I'm giving too much detail. Nonetheless, I'm here. I got some stories. Of course, it's no price talk. You know, we got a number of other folks on the network that do that. That's King and Zay. That's the Simonson family. That's Black Rule. That's the Stack Bros. So if you're looking for the price talk, I'm not that guy. Sorry, but not sorry. And yeah, other thing to know for housekeeping is this segment is brought to you by CJ the Smart guy. Full disclosure, he is my actual CPA. And if you were under a rock somehow, the tax thing just passed on April 15th. So yeah, if you're in an American jurisdiction, you're gonna need to cross your T's and dot your I's because the IRS ain't playing, and the other financial related agencies and departments are not playing either. But we'll see as we go further along. But anywho, I got some stories bouncing around internationally and locally. And as you see in the title, U.S. Treasury watching your bank account. So I'm gonna jump with that story first, and it basically boils down to the Treasury Department during the whole C19 period and what we had going on here in the States, as well as what was going on in our neighbors to the north. Shout outs to my Canucks up there. I got to make it back up there sooner than later. I really do miss being up in Canada. But nonetheless, the basic idea is there's a thing going on where what they're doing is the Treasury Department, as well as FinCEN, which is the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, they are putting it upon the banks to actively monitor and report when you are using your bank to send things. And what they're doing is, you know, when you have that section in a transaction that you can like write a memo for, like, oh, this is for Susan's birthday, this is for dinner out with Carol, I bought the car, you know what I'm saying? Like, let's say you paid like $5K for a used car or something. You have that option to put that in there. So what they're doing now is they're telling the banks, hey, you need to start monitoring for key words and then report up when these words start appearing in bank transactions. And there was something I seen that said that they were also, wait, which line? Search. Which line they went through banking customers? Yeah, so they're also looking at Zelle. So Zelle isn't going to be safe in a couple. If you here in the States, you know how Zelle is. Zelle was like kind of in that saving grace when they were talking about how they wanted to crack down on some of the other ways that people were sending funds from like bank to bank or bank to another person or whatever. But nonetheless, the title is somewhat clickbait, but it's not clickbait because you also have to put in the context, right? And I know some folks are like, wait, well, how does this relate to crypto? You said you give crypto related news stories. In my mind, they're not saying it within this article, and this was on the Daily HOla, by the way. Link for this will be in the description as usual. But it's one of those things of where you can do like a two birds with one stone, right? Right now, the argument is about, oh my God, the government is looking at my bank account. Well, not really. The government's telling the banks to monitor your bank account and then report to them on certain things that they want to know about. And so with that, the government isn't breaking your privacy. The banks already have it within their terms of service and regulatory protection that they can and do look at your financial transaction history, as well as they can curtail, they can freeze, they can reverse, they can lose a bunch of your money, right? What is it? The Dawes Act, chapter 5 or chapter 8 or something like that, is what gives the banks the ability to be able to be like, nah, we're not going to give you your money today, even though you've been with us for like 15, 20 years. That can happen. It's been happening. The point here is the way that this article is thrown, it makes it sound like the government is overreaching, but technically they already been doing the stuff. The real issue here is it's not just about, oh, we're going after criminals and this and following through on an actual investigation for illegal activity. This isn't about illegal activity. This is about capital flight control. This is about curtailing how you, as the person who worked for your money, as the person who has or supposed to have a bit the ability of like economic and financial sovereignty, is being curtailed by the financial institution and the government, really the bureaucrats. You don't vote for the bureaucrats. Remember that part. You vote for the Senate and the congressional folks. They appoint the people into the bureaucratic positions. The Treasury, FinCEN, DOJ, all of those legal executive let me not get into that. The point being is you don't vote for those folks, but those folks have influence over your financial activity, even when it is not illegal for you to donate to what cause you see as being fit. Now you have it that the government's like, we're not too cool with you donating to that. That's not cool with us. This is what's going on, y'all. I eventually see this picking up. And you know what's funny? This is how they was messing up folks before. You remember when we went through that whole era of where people were having issues with their banks, allowing them to send money to exchanges? This is part of how you was getting screwed, because they were monitoring, one, where the transaction was going, and two, like, what were you saying in the memos if you were writing anything in? Just throwing that out there. Another thing to be on the, here's the trend and the pattern. They're digging more into curtailing how you are allowed to spend your funds. Just throwing it out there, folks. Got to pay attention. Now we jumping across the sea, all the way on the other side of the world. Let me just drop this in the thing real quick. If anybody's there, say what up. I just dropped the hola. So Cointelegraph drops a story called Chinese workers paid in CBDC are cashing it out for real money. This is a report. Now, based on how I read this, what I don't like about this article is there are no actual numbers in this article. They talked, or they cut the quotes of one or two people, and they're like, yes, so people who are getting paid in CBDCs in China don't like, and it's like, well, how many people? Like, they literally have it where they are in the billions of dollars, and I'm saying dollars, like exchange of currency value exchange wise, they're in the billions that they were doing transactions. Good morning, GR. What's going on, everybody? And so they have quote volume, right? So the CBDs are going out, they're being used in certain regards, but some people are still like, nah, I gotta cash it out for this this yen. I'm not trying to mess with leaving it solely in the CBDC. And they make for valid reasons. What I thought was interesting, again, the two things that I thought was interesting in this article is, one, they don't give you an actual like, here's how much, here's how many companies and users were paid out as CBDCs, and then here's what we see for the amount of transactions that were reversed from CBDC back into the local fiat. So you don't really know, is it like half of the people? Is it the quarter of the folks paid out that way? So this is one of those, like, in my mind, the article isn't meant to necessarily inform you, but it's more about, well, look at how it's not really good. That's what this does, because they don't give you any hard numbers, and they don't give you the the local news platform that was covering the event, or give me a link to the actual report that was produced by that financial agency or department that was watching what was going on with it. So it's like, are you really informing me? Or are you trying to move my position on how I look at CBDCs and how I understand CBDCs over there versus how they work or would work over here? Again, like, you got to look at these things and go, am I being given a proper context for how that works there versus here? Because there's the cultural nuances. Because even in the end of this article, what they do is they hit a point about how the privacy was an issue. The financial privacy is having the CBDC thing. And what folks, if you ain't never been outside the US, I promise you, the concept of financial privacy, digital privacy, does not translate the way folks think it does. Like, you go to Latin America, you go to Africa, you go out in Asia, and I'm talking, you go into places where they have either a very low level financial infrastructure of just like traditional bank place and like one or two ATMs, you know what I'm saying, in a city, versus the like, you have it where X amount of the population of that country does not live in major city areas. Most of it is rural. The concept of financial privacy is very, very different across these different types of societies, is my point. And so I question the intention of this article and what is being pushed over here for the Western audience to understand versus what the people in China actually understand and how they're valuing or not valuing CBDCs as a form of payment by their employers and the use case and utility. I'm not saying CBDCs are the greatest thing since sliced bread. I'm also not saying they are the worst thing, but I'm looking at it from, in my standpoint, for my operational environment, they wouldn't be a good thing over here for me. Over there is a different case. That operational environment is a different situation compared to here in the US. This article does not put that context on it, in my opinion. Link for this will be in the description. If you disagreeing or agreeing with me, comments is always open. You know we don't delete, but we do keep receipts. So yeah, jumping on to this next story. This is not directly crypto, but it was also covered on Cointelegraph. And I was reading through it real quick. And basically, it's reports of bleached counterfeit bills crop up across North America. Now, here's why I bring this up. If you've been paying attention to me for the last couple of months, I've had at least 2 to 3 criminal related stories a month about like dark networks and money laundering elements within various parts of the US, right? Like, so New York has their thing going on. Remember, I covered the story with the Indian network. There's other situation with the lady over in UK who was doing the thing through Dubai and stuff. The point being is, when you want to like get an idea, I think there are multiple ways to get ideas or get a picture or sentiment of how your economy is doing, as well as how things are doing on like the larger scale beyond just like your state or your country, right? And when you look at like what's going on in the criminal quote element, when you start to see either an expansion in certain things or you see a decline or a total move of where it might have been something that only happened on one side of town, now it went over to the other side of town, or you start to see where there was just something that we saw like in the northeast of the US, but now we're starting to see it in the Midwest. So case in point with this stuff going on with the money situation, capital flight control, money laundering, in my mind, is kind of hand in hand. So within this story, they're basically saying, hey, law enforcement is starting to notice, and this dude, he got caught ridiculous. Like, what was it? 45-year-old dude he did a fair amount, but he was, if this is the same connection, he was doing it stupidly because he was doing $100 bills. Like 20 and up, everybody starts paying attention to the money that you give them. That's the stupidity part of it. But I understand the idea of, let me use a larger amount and I'm not walking around with a stack of ones, right? But if anything, you know what I'm saying, just going through the strip club, like you go in, you do what you do, and then you come back out, or you go in for a minute and use the singles in that regards to then, you know, I'm not telling y'all what to do. I'm not telling y'all what to do. The point being is, and I said this when the New York story I had covered came out, considering how harsh New York is on crypto, if there were people who are willing to still run and set up a network where they were giving you cash, here's a stack of USD, because they were doing the outside of it. What other money black market things are going on? And this is the perfect example of it. The guy obviously didn't just figure it out on his own, and he's not obviously the only one doing it. In my mind, this is an indicator that there's other things or other troubles that are going on within our economy, because I can only imagine there has to be multiple investigations across the US, because they also bring up the point of, like, they've seen stuff in Canada, they've seen stuff as far as Hawaii, they've seen stuff in Latin America. So this to me is an indicator that there's bigger trouble underneath the surface, because you also got to remember the criminal element, whether it comes to technology, whether it comes to like financial instruments and ways that you can like manipulate and do stuff. Usually the first area or first phase of where those things kind of get tested out and like, let's see what it could do. And then it will push out into the mainstream side. Tech side, money side, in my mind, works the same way. And that's what I'm saying as far as that. I'm expecting to hear more of this as we push through this decade. Because if you're paying attention to the other things going on in the economy, the buying power of the dollar is not going up. It's locally speaking, within the US, inflation is kicking our asses right now. This will tie over into crypto at some point, because somebody's going to do something where they're going to figure out a way to use fake fiat to get it into some exchange, and then it's going to be a whole thing about money laundering. That's at least one example in my head. But nonetheless, I'm going to jump off to this next story. Last point, I'm just taking it as an indicator for there's other things that will start popping up. Depending on what you're paying attention to, you might see this sooner than other people, especially if you're in law enforcement. Just saying. All right. So this other story that caught my attention was Russian energy firms prepare to hunt private crypto miners. This basically boils down to people are using, all right, in general, right, as a civilian residential person, you don't use your electricity to, quote, make money. You don't use your home electricity to make money. And we're not going to talk about the remote work folks, because some people might jump into that part of it, right? In general, you are using the electricity that comes into your home to power your lights, to keep the fridge cold, to get the hot water heater going, to have heat during the winter, right? So the way that this story breaks it down is like the energy sector, energy industry is pushing the regulators to start making rules and laws that will basically go after the mom and pop folks, the home basement miner folks, because the claim is, hey, this is disruptive to the network. What, in my mind, the real reason is these folks are using more energy and they're making money, and we as the industry, the energy industry, are not being compensated for the retail side of it in comparison to how we are compensated for it in the commercial side of it. When you have a business, it is understood the ability for you to be able to draw high wattage and use energy for machines, for people to do either physical work, for people to run the computers, to be able to do the work that they do as far as like the non-physical side stuff. That is understood. Hence why this whole situation with Europe and how they have now lost their cheap energy costs that they were getting from Russia is affecting their economy, because now the energy is more expensive. And that means, well, if the energy is more expensive, does our production go up? No, because it's costing us more. So we can't scale out. The point being here is the energy industry in Russia is looking to go after the mom and pop folks. And the interesting thing is they're pushing smart meters, which I kind of wonder, as far as like, how is that not already a thing over there? Because it's not like Russia's a backwater country, right? For the things that I've seen about like St. Petersburg and some of the other places, it's not a backwater country. It has a sizable technology infrastructure. So I'm surprised that they're just talking about smart meters right now, which in my mind, if their industry is arguing that over there, how long do you think before our industry argues that here? We already have what's going on with the different states, say, where some states are pro. Hey, what's going on, Crypto City? Some states are anti, right? So you have it that like Virginia made a proposal for how the citizens of Virginia have the right to mine Bitcoin, hold Bitcoin, and do all of that stuff. Hasn't gone to full thing yet. It's still in the proposal phase. I forgot whose state just did something, and I covered the story, but I cannot remember the state for the life of me. It's not Wyoming, so don't say Wyoming. What up, nerd up? I can't remember the state, but the point being is that this is something where if our industry, if our energy industry, the industry, not the states, are looking at other jurisdictions and what their industry is doing there, and it works over for them, what do you think they're going to do here? Like, we already have the smart meter technology, so I imagine it'll be a certain level of upgrade. And if you know anything about how miners work right now, the level of Denoid, the level of energy, like your joint jumps. When I tell you your electricity consumption jumps, it jumps. So on the company side, it's kind of really easy to note if you in an apartment, if you in like a bungalow size house, like under 1,000 square feet, even if you're in a 2,000 square feet house, like you will notice the jump in the electricity consumption, the watts. And so in my mind, indicator. And I'm also bring this to the other point of, for all of the talk of how they over there, the Russian, the oh God, what is the name of their thing? God damn, I can't remember it now, but like Putin and the whole like crypto is bad in Russia. I've been saying it for more than a year now. They have been doing way too much regulatory stuff for me to believe that they're anti-crypto or that they're using crypto in quote illegal ways. Right? That's just my thought process, because based on these stories I've been covering for more than a year, it's been a lot of regulatory activity going on between their central bank, their local regional banks, the financial agencies, and now we're looking at what the energy sector is trying to do to make sure they secure their cut. They're going after the residential folks. I don't know how well that will hold out though, because at the same time, it's a cat and mouse game as far as the technology is open source. The technology, what's going on, Stream Elements? The technology is where you have the company on one side and let's say the free thinker DIY person on the other side. How do I say this? If anything, aside from the fact that this will crack down on a sizable portion if it goes through on the mom and pop sector, it will also push innovation in the development of the miners to be less produce less heat and then be more energy efficient. I will be interested to see how this plays out in the next couple of years if this actually passes through in Russia, and how would that proliferate through the rest of the mom and pop sector of mining. And I was saying to my homeboy the other day, like, yeah, everyone's talking about how the new miners are more efficient and like it's gonna if you're at the commercial scale, they're basically gonna eat up the rewards and stuff, and a lot of the mom and pop miners won't be able to get anything really. And I said, at some point within this decade, I see it that something is going to come out as far as another revenue source out of Bitcoin mining. Strictly talking on the Bitcoin side of this stuff right now. I don't know what it is yet, but something else is going to come out of this because people are people. They're going to come up with something. They're going to try to figure something out. The question is, will the rest of the space adopt it? And I'm not talking about the ordinals and all that stuff. I'm saying something beyond that. I don't know what it's going to be yet, though. I'm still waiting to see. I honestly am still waiting to see. All right, next joint. Real quick. Turkey prepares new crypto law to align with international standards. If you don't pay attention to anything on the international scale, then you just don't have Turkey on your radar at all. It's not even something that you could find on a map, right? I bring this story up because this is just another sign of how Turkey is 100% working to position itself as a viable link within the Western markets, within the Western governments, within the Western financial industry, because generally speaking, Turkey is seen as like a gray market area where you have to watch their financial transactions. So like if you're on the banking side or the financial side and somehow whatever that incoming transaction is touch something related to Turkey, that's an instamatic order, like flag. Depending on where you are in the States or Europe or certain Caribbean islands, it's an automatic like flag and stop. Account is frozen. The point being is Erdogan, who's their prime minister guy, he has been definitely doing his thing on the international scene to put Turkey in a more advantageous position. And he's also playing somewhat of the go-between of like Western Europe and Eastern Europe and like things going on with Russia and like as well as the Muslim world / Arabic world / Persian world. It will be interesting to see how his administration levels things out over the next couple of years and whether like they fully get accepted for what he seems to be intending to do, which is to position Turkey as one of the leading influences within the things that I just mentioned. Arabic world, financial world, and that cross between the Europe and like Russia, China thing. They're just going to follow the same stuff that's already going on, at least publicly, as far as the transportation laws and the KYC stuff. So it's nothing really groundbreaking that they're doing. But I think this goes to the bigger thing of how Erdogan is looking to position the country in the geopolitical sense. If you've never heard the phrase multipolar, that's the stuff that's going on right now. In the bigger context, geopolitical stuff. Just throwing that out there for the folks who pay attention to the international stuff. Let me jump on this one real quick. So Kraken challenges SEC overreach in recent court filing. I'm going to read this section and I'm going to give my thought on this. So the short of it is Kraken motion outlined a critical distinction between the primary offerings conducted outside of its platform and the secondary market transactions that occur within it. The filing emphasizes that only digital assets, not investment contracts, are traded, broken, or settled on Kraken. or the distinction according to Kraken underscores a fundamental misunderstanding by SEC of the digital asset transactions involved. So, one, the SEC is not misunderstanding. The SEC is saying this is how we want to define stuff. You're going to have to listen to us because we have authority to be able to do this. And we can argue it enough based on these other precedented court cases before this that say we have the authority. We're walking the legal framework to our advantage, to our side, to our position on how we are looking at these financial instruments. Two, in my mind, Kraken is a little like, what is it? Too late, too something, too little, too late. Like, and King said this how long ago? Like, if y'all would have just been on some no earlier, and in my mind, excuse me, if they would, if the industry would have actually stood together, if the industry would have actually stood together, where Gemini, Coinbase, all of the American companies, even X number of the international companies was like, yo, we're fighting y'all in court. As soon as y'all look in our direction, we fighting you in court. And here's the other part and I was thinking about this the other day because I was listening to Eli, the computer guy, and he was making a point about how what most folks don't understand within the tech industry is that a company being valued at this amount or said to be a good company because they have, stock values at this high, the money isn't necessarily coming out of their making revenue. The money's coming from the investors. And so the question then gets into, in my mind, in relation to this whole SEC situation and how they've been sniping at the companies individually and sniping at individuals individually, case in point, Reggie Middleton, is what are the investors saying? Are the investors and the people who have influence within the governance and the operations of the company, are they going, well, John says, because John's a lawyer and he says that we need to follow what the SEC says, or he says we need to prepare for it this way, versus the let's say Brad, who's just like, no, we need to fight it, but we need to fight it through the court system beforehand. That in my, I don't know any of those conversations, but from what it seems like to me, everyone was on the no, we just got to wait and see what they say, and then we got to comply with them. Versus that was the majority of folks, versus the folks who said, hey, we need to fight. In my mind, the question is, why was no one arguing for unity within the industry for self-policing? Hey, you're on this exchange, you got your joint, you got your, and I imagine that X number of the angel investors, the back end folks, are the same people, like the same pot of money. That's the part that's getting me. So it's like you're beholden to the investors who want their return on stuff, and it's like, well, their thought process is all old school of, well, we have to follow what the regulators push out. This is the only way, quote, the industry can grow. It doesn't mean this is the only way the technology can grow. It means this is the only way it will make it into mainstream, which, depending on how you look at it, arguably that's a damn lie. The technology still worked. The use case was there. People figured out, oh, that works for my use case. That's what got it going. But yet we're constantly told you need to have regulatory adoption in order for a technology or a use case to proliferate. And no one is having a conversation about the people on the back end who are the money bags for these companies. In my mind, it was a divide and conquer thing. Andreessen Horowitz, 16Z, 16 ounces, like they literally distributed multi-million dollars across different Ethereum based and non-Ethereum based projects. And this is like, all right, well, if we did, 20 of these, as long as like 3 of these make it, we make the money back. Like the numbers are really weird. I get the mentality of it, But at the same time, it's like, well, then that means your idea of how the industry should grow and develop and proliferate is not the same way I'm looking at it, because you only see it, well, how do I make money off of it versus how does this technology actually help people? That's just my thought process. And like, this is the stuff that Jesse was arguing about in the beginning. And we see where Jesse's at right now. He's not the head of the ship because the company is a company. The company has investors. The company has backers, and they have a different viewpoint. That's just where we at right now. Little too late in my mind. Like, who has the bigger bank? Is it going to be the investors behind Kraken, or is it going to be the federal government? And then, if they did some shit where they were like, all right, well, we're going to start going after the business and we're going to start messing with the money. The investors are going to get on the people who run the business to be like, yo, Kowtow, do what you need to do so I can get the rest of my money. That's what our system is, y'all. That's what our system is. I mean, I guess a little hand clap for saying something, but arguably too little too late. We'll see how it works out. Actually, another thing to note, I wonder how many other crypto related businesses are going to start like flipping back. But who's going to actually say, all right, we need to actually come together? I'm wondering that part. Just throwing this one thing out here too. I didn't even read the article on this, but apparently CZ might do a book. That if CZ dropped a book, that was like even half of what Zay's book should be. I'm talking about volume 2, by the way. I'm still waiting on my book, Zay. I'm still here. But nonetheless, because think about like the number of conversations and the governmental departments that CZ had to talk to, and the number of millionaire, billionaire people that were in his ear about stuff. Imagine if Arthur Hayes dropped a book. Granted, Arthur Hayes, he writes his dissertations on Stacks and on Medium, but like an actual like, all right, let me tell y'all some of the stuff like here and on some Zay level shit. I don't know if the space would be ready for that. I don't know. I'm not saying that that's what this book is going to be. This is like allegedly he's going to write a book. Did I put the link in the description? It might be. You can find it on You Today anyhow. If you just put it in search, you'll find the thing about CZ doing a book. I just wanted to throw that out there. I just thought of the thing about comparing it to Zay and King at the last minute now. But yeah, that's a thing. Other thing to note, so apparently the DOJ is handing off the daily monitoring of Binance to this company called Foreign Risk Alliance. This whole article, in no part of this article does it mention how big the contract is. I imagine this has to be a multi-million-dollar contract that the DOJ is giving out to FRA in order to, quote, monitor Binance US going forward. We just watching money being moved around. And think about this. This is a British company, by the way, right? So an American law enforcement agency made a foreign company kowtow, made the foreign head of the company leave the company, who is now facing, well, they already sentenced him to jail time. And in that process, they made the floor price of staying out of jail no longer at what King used to say was 30 million. It is now in the billions. And we also now see that a number of other jurisdictions, aka nation states, aka countries, are going after Binance. I said it in the beginning when this first started happening, when they thought the whole like we need to put a DOJ person on, and then they put the dude from the IMF in as the head of Binance. And granted, Binance US, Binance International, they in the same boat right now. It's a slow chokeout. It's a slow chokeout in my mind. Nonetheless, this company basically got the contract to monitor them for 3 years to show that, hey, they're following the compliance. They're following what they said in the plea deal. There is no mention of how much the company is actually getting. It's a foreign company that is getting taxpayer money, y'all. I need y'all to think about this. Let that shit sink in. We paying taxes for the DOJ to contract the monitoring of a foreign company to another foreign company. Like, you can't make this shit up. You can't make this shit up. I would like to hear, like, there should be a whole chapter. If CZ writes a book, there should be a whole chapter just on this part. Just on this part. Like, dog, that's all I got on that one. That's all I got. Like, that's all I got. Other things to note. Bitcoin Asia Conference draws 5,000 attendees. Allegedly, well, not the way the article is written, by the way. Sorry. By the way, that article for the Binance monitoring story, that was on Bitcoinist. Link in the description as always. This next one, links also in the description. First time actually seeing CoinU. So Bitcoin Asia Conference draws 5,000 attendees. Half of them are from mainland China. Now, the thing that got me of why I kept with this story, well, there's a couple of things. One, there was no other repeating coverage of this story, right? We here in the States, you over in Europe, they make 1,000 people at a conference. Every crypto channel is talking about it, right? X number of the content influencers are there walking around. 5,000 plus people go to a crypto conference in Hong Kong, and half of them are from China. I've been saying this for months now at this point. Hong Kong is a sandbox. Hong Kong is the exit and entry for the mainland. It is the one only part of China where you can do the moving of precious metals. They're now pushing the thing with the CBDCs in Hong Kong. They're now also they did the thing with the ETF, which from what I've seen in other news things, didn't draw the attention that it was being fluffed as months earlier. What's going on, Mr. Lamas? And so the question then in my mind gets into, there was no advertisement for this that I saw on my side here in the States. But then I also wasn't paying attention to certain things. Like I've been really slacking on Twitter and IG and all that other stuff, right? But yet they got 5,000 people, and I don't even know how much the tickets were, but I imagine they wasn't cheap because Hong Kong ain't a cheap place, y'all. But nonetheless, my other big thing is, for all the talking points we get about how China is against crypto, China is against mining, China is against Bitcoin in the Western facing news platforms. How are you against something this much and you have a conference that has over 5,000 people? In your financial sandbox, in my mind, the narratives don't match up. I've also been covering how they've been doing a lot of regulatory stuff within their version of their Supreme Court and their financial regulatory bodies. Been covering that for a couple of months. Again, The narratives don't match up because all we hear over here is China is against crypto. China's banning Bitcoin this. China's banning that. But people are still mining. People are still using crypto wallets. People are still trading. What did they really ban? Again, to my earlier point at the beginning of this, how we understand stuff over here in this Western American society, this we'll go with Western society, things like privacy, things like financial freedom, things like economic sovereignty, things like digital privacy and stuff like that. It's not the same thing when you start going into other regions of the world for how the society looks at it based on how the government interacts with them. It's not the same thing. And so it makes me wonder going forward, as I've been saying, like I want to eventually make it out to Hong Kong because I want to see this stuff for myself. You're putting precious metals, fiat, crypto, the CBDCs, and who knows what other financial instruments will come up in the next 5 years, or at least before 2030. And that's the sandbox right there. And they're allowing the Westerners to come in. They're allowing all of the other countries within that region. So the Koreans are over there, the Japanese are over there, and everyone's trying to figure out like which way will these financial instruments work to make a lucrative, productive market. I don't know. Maybe it's just me and like my curiosity on that whole thing, and just like kind of being frustrated and tired and annoyed with how things are working here on our side. Again, top of the story, Treasury is telling the banks to monitor and actively report what what words you use in your memos for your financial transactions. Who do you think that gets pushed over to after a while? Like, it's not that you did anything illegal, it's that we're monitoring you actively so that when you do something that we don't agree with policy wise, we go after you. Look what we saw happen in Canada. And they're doing something else now too. I forgot there's something else that happened up there recently. Just saying, folks. In my mind, there was always some kind of crypto related news story going on. It's just a matter of like, what are you paying attention to? What is your operational environment? So you understand, like, is it relevant to you? It might not be relevant to you now, but that doesn't mean it's not going to change in 3 years. Case in point, Russia energy sector is talking about going after mom and pop miners now. What does that mean for the US in 5 years? What does that mean for our energy industry and how they'll look to go after mom and pop miners in the next 5 years, in the next 3 years? The states are doing different things for protecting or banning the individual mom and pop level folks' right and ability to do their own mining. The states are going in different directions. Just saying, this is our operational environment, and there is no continuity in favor or against. Everyone's doing their own thing. The regulatory body is hammering people, and at the same time, folks are still trying to find ways to get a bang for their buck by doing counterfeit fiat money. This is our operational environment. Just saying. All right, I'm done. Last minutes. That was the last story. Yeah, it was. I'm hoping everybody had a good weekend. Hopefully, if you still have your mothers with you and you have amicable relations, because I know some people who have lost their mothers when they were young. I know some people who've lost them recently. I know some people who have non-amicable relationships with their parents in general. Hopefully, you're not one of those people. You did get to enjoy the time or at least share the sentiment. And if you're a mother out there, happy belated Mother's birthday. I mean, not birthday, but happy belated Mother's Day. It's a Monday. Go out there, be productive, or at least as I say, productive over busy. This episode is brought to you by CJ the Smart Guy. He's a certified CPA who focuses on cryptocurrencies for individuals and businesses that deal within that realm. Not saying you got to use him. His link was in the description. but at least do your due diligence and research when you figure out who you want to use to deal with that tax side stuff, because it can get funky. And as I say, from one human to the next, if it can't be a productive over a busy day, at least be in a safe place, in a safe space, and in good company. And that's what I got for you, y'all. One. Do, do, do.